a series of texts, one at 6:03 and the other at 6:10. And he was very concerned about the nature of these text messages, so concerned that he ended up calling the police, who eventually came here around 2:30 this afternoon with a search warrant. And that is what you're seeing with everything that is happening here at the house. They came in with that search warrant and busted through everything. Our photographer who's here, Todd Ron, has been on the scene a little longer. He actually talked with David and said that Vance lived in the room where the large window is right there. Going back to those text messages, he started to read a little bit of it. He was very, very emotional. Apparently Vance thanked David for his friendship, and said that he believed that he might be dead soon, that he was going to be gone for a long time. And because of those references, David called police, and was very worried, very concerned, because he went, after he received those text messages, he actually went into Vance's room here to check on him, and he was gone. No sign of him. The last time that David saw Vance was last night. He said that nothing stuck out, nothing was out of the ordinary, other than he gave him a check for 4 months rent, and said that he had just gotten a big bonus at work and paid in advance for 4 months rent. So at that point, David didn't think anything was strange, certainly not thinking that something like this would happen. We do have, again, our photographer Todd Ron was here and spoke a little bit with David, had some sound here that I think we want to go to now.
Well, he's been living up here for a while. Oh. He was living in Bloomington. He was a manager of a food place. Yeah. And then he quit the job and he went down to Africa, got things going down there, said he wanted to start his own companies. He wasn't strong. But he hasn't talked about abortion for years. I mean, this goes back through the 90s. He really hated abortion. But we hardly ever talked. I haven't talked really about abortion for him for years. He would always want to work, like 7 days a week, work. He's trying to get money to start his businesses.
So you could see there, David knew Vance for a very long time. He said, knew him since he was in 4th grade, and give us just a little bit of that history here. He was renting a room in this house in North Minneapolis from David. And when law enforcement came this afternoon and went into the home with a search warrant, David said they went into his room and they took several file folders, and nothing else really. David said there were no weapons removed from the home. And speaking to us, on the front porch a few minutes ago, he's very, very devastated at everything that happened. He said his heart goes out to the lawmakers, their families. He said, no one is going to believe this, but I cannot believe that Vance would do something like this. He said, I know.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Raya Katene. We'll have your Father's Day forecast in just a few moments, but first, the latest as we enter day 2 of the manhunt for a suspect accused in 2 targeted shootings of state lawmakers. The search for 57-year-old Vance Belter now stretching as far as South Dakota, as investigators say they're on the lookout for both Belter and another person of interest. Right now, the FBI is offering a $50,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest. Belter is accused of killing State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband in what officials are calling a politically motivated assassination. State Senator John Hoffman and his wife were also shot and are recovering in the hospital this morning. And within the last few minutes, the Emergency Operations Center in Blaine has now reopened as investigators reconvene for the morning. Our Audrey Russo joins us live from those headquarters. Audrey, what do we know right now?
Yeah, Raya, things did just open up here. This is kind of our home base all day yesterday, and now as we're into the 7 o'clock hour, it has reopened. But we've been reaching out to law enforcement throughout the night, asking when the next update will be on the search. We've also asked if there have been any associates or friends of the suspect, Vance Belter, taken in for questioning. At this point in the morning, we don't know exactly when the next briefing will be. So this is the absolute latest from the FBI. Take a look at your screen. This is a picture of the suspect, Vance Belter. You can see he was last seen Saturday morning in Minneapolis wearing a light-colored cowboy hat, a dark long-sleeve shirt, light pants, carrying a dark bag. He's about 6'1". He weighs roughly 220 pounds. He has brown hair and brown eyes. And now, Raya, as you said, there's a $50,000 reward for his arrest, and he should be considered armed and dangerous, and he may pose as a police officer. So just to recap exactly what happened, police say around 2 a.m. Saturday, Senator John Hoffman and his wife were shot at their home in Champlin. We haven't been notified of any changes to their condition. We know that they are recovering. But when we were at the scene, we could see as many as 8 or 9 bullet holes through the front door of that residence. Around 3:30 in the morning, Brooklyn Park Police went to check on former Speaker Melissa Hortman at her home. When they arrived, they saw what appeared to be a police vehicle and a person who looked like an officer leaving the home. That person evidently was not a police officer, exchanging gunfire with the real officers on the scene and then running from that scene. Hortman and her husband both died. Their official causes of death, per the medical examiner, multiple gunshot wounds. And there really is, Raya, so much to say about this. The community, of course, is still reeling from the fact that The suspect allegedly posed as a police officer. In the car that he left behind, it was outfitted to look like a police cruiser with lights and plates that said police. And inside that car, there was a list of about 70 names of Democratic politicians and abortion rights activists, as well as some of those flyers referencing the protests yesterday. There really is a lot to say about this. A little bit too early, of course, to speculate on a motive as they are still searching for him, but that is the latest what we know right now. Raya?
All right. Look closely. The name of this man is Vance Bolter. He's the man who shot 2 Minnesota Democrat lawmakers this morning. And I don't want to hear shit that this is not the time to play politics. There's already misinformation saying that this man is far left and he's the one who killed these Democrats. When in reality, he's an NAR Christian nationalist. Which, if you look it up, NAR means New Apostolic Reformation, which is a Christian movement that seeks to take dominion over politics, business, and culture in preparation for the end times and Jesus' return and becoming more of a presence in American politics. It's basically a Christian cult that says that Christianity should take over all facets of life. Not only that, but in his car, they found a manifesto, a list of other possible targets were retrieved from the suspect's vehicle. Again, Republicans are already spreading misinformation saying that it was a far-left person who did this. Funny enough, the only people he wanted to kill were Democrats. The list included dozens of other Democrats from Minnesota, including Governor Tim Walz, U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar, U.S. Senator Tina Smith, and State Attorney General Keith Ellison. So here's what we need to do. I need you to look very fucking closely and understand the actual facts of this case. Because to this day, you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene holding up a picture of a little white girl named Laken Riley, who they claimed was raped and murdered by an undocumented immigrant. Because of that one case, they created the Laken Riley Act. The Laken Riley Act is a United States law that requires the detention without bond of illegal immigrants admitting to, charged with, or convicted of theft-related crimes, assaulting a police officer, or a crime that results in death or serious bodily injury. So literally because of that one fucking case, MAGA Republicans decided they wanted to create an entire law to vilify and strip the rights of an entire group of people. Marjorie Taylor Greene takes every second of every fucking day to remind us of it. Literally the other day, Marjorie Taylor Greene whipped out the photo of Laken Riley to use it in front of Governor Kathy Hochul, governor of New York. But they had a fucking pointless hearing on sanctuary cities, which was all political theater because they knew that Trump was fucking watching. Told Governor Kathy Hochul that she was complicit in the death of Laken Riley because she's a governor for a sanctuary state. So here's what I want to fucking happen. Where's the Hortman-Hoffman Act that requires the detention of white domestic terrorists, MAGA Christian nationalists, charged with or convicted of theft-related crimes, assaulting a police officer, or crime that results in death or bodily injury? Where the fuck is that act? Because that's the fucking energy we need to motherfucking keep.
A manhunt is ongoing to catch Vance Belter, the man who police say is a suspect in the shooting of 2 Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota on Saturday. Governor Tim Walz called it a politically motivated assassination. Here's what we know.
It was not a real police officer. This is somebody that clearly had been impersonating a police officer, again, using the trust of this badge and this uniform to manipulate their way into the home.
Authorities say the 57-year-old suspect impersonated a police officer when he killed Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband and wounded Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and his wife.
When our officers confronted him, the individual immediately fired upon the officers, who exchanged gunfire, and the suspect retreated back into the home. After
the suspect fled, police say they found what appears to be a hit list with dozens of names in his car. Officials say the list included prominent lawmakers like Representative Ilhan Omar, Senator Tina Smith, and pro-abortion rights advocates. Flyers for anti-Trump protests were also said to be found. Belter has worked as a director for a private armed security service, according to the company's webpage. The firm was registered to Belter's home address and listed a woman who appears to be his wife as president and CEO. She did not respond to messages from CNN. Elsewhere, records show that Belter served on a state board with Senator Hoffman, one of the victims who survived. In 2019, Governor Tim Walz put Belter on the Governor's Workforce Development Board, a group of business owners who recommend policies to the state government.
I feel the presence of the Lord in this place.
Je sens la présence de Dieu en ces lieux.
Could you pray with me, please?
According to video and social media posts reviewed by CNN, Belter is an outspoken evangelical Christian who traveled to Africa and was critical of LGBTQ rights. Police say they are still investigating a motive for the attacks.
We finally have an update on the manhunt going on in Minnesota, and yes, he looks exactly like the person you thought he would look like.
The manhunt is ongoing to catch Vance Belter, the man who police say is a suspect in the shooting of 2 Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota on Saturday. Governor Tim Walz called it a politically motivated assassination. Here's what we know.
It was not a real police officer. This is somebody that clearly had been impersonating a police officer, again, using the trust of this badge and this uniform to manipulate their way into the home.
Authorities say the 57-year-old suspect impersonated a police officer when he killed Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband and wounded Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and his wife.
When our officers confronted him, the individual immediately fired upon the officers, who exchanged gunfire, and the suspect retreated back into the home.
After the suspect fled, police say they found what appears to be a hit list with dozens of names in his car. Officials say the list included prominent lawmakers like Representative Ilhan Omar, Senator Tina Smith, and pro-abortion rights advocates. Flyers for anti-Trump protests were also said to be found. Belter has worked as a director for a private armed security service, according to the company's webpage. The firm was registered to Belter's home address and listed a woman who appears to be his wife as president and CEO. She did not respond to messages from CNN. Elsewhere, records show that Belter served on a state board with Senator Hoffman, one of the victims who survived. In 2019, Governor Tim Walz put Belter on the Governor's Workforce Development Board, a group of business owners who recommend policies to the state government.
Now, what FBI and law enforcement are trying to figure out is why, when he had this money, power, and access to be with state lawmakers, why did he turn against them? Because he was a business owner, he sat on a board with other state officials to determine new laws and legislation that could be helpful to pass for small business and medium-sized business owners. So that's kind of where the crux goes, but unfortunately, they have not found him. Now, according to an update about an hour ago, the police stated that they found a second vehicle belonging to Vance Bolter in the county of Sibley in Minnesota. They asked residents to be vigilant as officers are in the area and the manhunt is underway. Individuals had spoken with CNN and stated that they were at church, and by the time they had left church, that the roads had been blocked off, and then everybody received a text message from the state letting them know that it's going to be a blockade and people cannot quite go home yet. So they're really just sheltering in place still at church. Now, the crazy part about it is when CNN reached out to the president of the United States, this is what he had to say. He said, well, it's a terrible thing, and I think he's a terrible governor, referring to Tim Walz. He goes on to say, I think he's a grossly incompetent person. I may give him a call. I may call others too. Literally, while the state is in turmoil, you had to throw a dig at the governor. This is insane. But the story's still developing, and if they catch this guy, I'm going to keep you guys posted. But if you're in the Minnesota area, please shelter in place and make sure you share this video.
We have a breaking news updates. Authorities just found the third vehicle linked to Vance Bolter, the man accused of assassinating 2 Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota, and this time they also found his cowboy hat. The discovery happened in Selby County, just about 60 miles southwest of Minneapolis. Federal agents, state troopers, and local SWAT teams have locked down a massive search area near Green Isle. They are doing a door-to-door check of every home, barn, basement, and field, a many-mile-wide radius. What's making this even more urgent is the time of day. It is getting dark. Authorities say that once night falls, locating a fugitive in rural terrain becomes nearly impossible unless you have thermal imaging from a helicopter or drone. The FBI is using heat-seeking technology, but no confirmation yet on sightings. Earlier in the day, neighbors reported gunshots, and officers say Bolter may still be on foot, possibly hiding in brush or underground spaces. This is the third vehicle tied to him. The first was left at the scene of the shooting. The second was found in Minneapolis. And this one with his hat left nearby has now shifted the entire focus of the manhunt. A $50,000 reward is being offered. Do not approach. Make sure you call 911. Follow me on Instagram.
The man who assassinated the Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota posed as a cop, exchanged fire with police, and escaped on foot while being fitted in a complete police outfit and having a cruiser with police lights on it. Shortly after, the news is saying, oh, he got appointed by Tim Walz to a position, so he must be a Democrat. Wrong. He was appointed by Tim Walz to a position. In 2016, he listed his political affiliation as none or other. In 2020, he listed his political preference as no party preference. But his roommate and long-term friend said he was a radical Trump supporter and then read a text message that he sent to them basically saying that he will be gone for a while, meaning he was going to do what he did. Regardless of all of that, this man had a manifesto with over 70 Democratic names, including the governor, Tim Walz, the attorney general, several other people. So if he was a Democratic person, as you guys are trying to present, and he was anti-Trump, why would he be killing Democrats? Why would he be targeting Democrats? Why would he be targeting people protesting Trump who are Democratic, most likely? You see how the story's not adding up? And then the police officers went to the first house and they just magically went to go do a wellness check on the other person that was assassinated. I just want you guys, I want to know what you guys think about all of those facts. Because for me, it's not adding up that a man was dressed as a police officer, killed someone, came out the front door, shot at cops, went back inside, left his vehicle, escaped on foot. Now there's a manhunt. They don't know where he is. He had a name. He had names of 70 people, including all Democrats. And the first thing the media is saying, oh, he worked for Tim Walz.
We are going to talk about the assassin in Minnesota. I'm going to be giving you information about the assassin in Minnesota. Every single piece of information that I'm going to be giving you is verified from a primary source. If I do not know or I am speculating, I will say so with my language. I will say something like it appears or allegedly. I need you to understand that before we get in here, because there is a massive culture of misinformation that exists on social media, and I refuse to participate in it, but I feel like debunking some of this information is also something that I need to be doing as a creator. The person of interest that they are currently looking for is a man by the name of Vance Bolter. He is a white male, 57 years old. Here's the picture that they used at the press conference. An individual that is assumed to be Mr. Bolter, disguised as a law enforcement officer, gained access to the home of 2 Minnesota lawmakers, shooting and injuring 2 of them, John Hoffman and his spouse, and killing 2 more, Melissa Hortman and her husband. This individual was confronted by police officers outside of Melissa Hortman's home. Gunfire was exchanged. They escaped into the house and presumably out the back. They are still at large. They are armed and presumed dangerous. In their escape, they were forced to abandon the vehicle they had used to approach John Hoffman and Melissa Hortman's home. It is through that they discovered a manifesto and the identity of one Vance Bolter. In the vehicle, some interesting bits of evidence were found, including a manifesto that had a list of Democratic lawmaker names, most of whom spoke out ardently against pro-life policies. There were indeed flyers for No Kings protests in the vehicle. The reason behind that is currently unknown. It is presumed at this point that his motive was politically motivated, targeting Democratic lawmakers that were pro-choice. Vance Bolter is a registered Republican. It has been confirmed by several family members. Again, secondhand information, so keep that in mind. It has been confirmed by several family members that he voted for Trump in both 2016 and 2024. He was indeed appointed to a workforce under Tim Walz. It was a bipartisan workforce. There were people on both sides of the aisle working in this workforce. That is not uncommon, not just in Minnesota, but in most states. That is the information that we have. Anything more that you hear until more information is released by the police, by investigators, by law enforcement, is just hearsay, conjecture, and probably misinformation.
There's people, especially in America,
Il y a des gens, particulièrement aux États-Unis,
they don't know what sex they are. They don't know how their sexual orientation. They're confused.
Ils ne savent pas ce qu'ils sont exactement, ils ont une confusion.
The enemy has gotten so far into their mind and their soul.
Et l'ennemi est entré dans le fond de leur pensée et de leur âme.
But this word
Mais cette parole
cuts deeper
va aux profondeurs.
because it's living
Parce qu'elle est
and
vivante.
it's active.
Et elle est agissante.
And God goes down there and pulls that out.
Et elle peut entrer dans notre cœur et enlever tout ce qui est de mal.
And he sets every person free.
Et pour...
Some say Satan was over the head of worship.
D'autres disent que Satan était le numéro 1 de l'adoration.
He was the highest of high in the heavens.
Il était l'ange le plus élevé au ciel.
Underneath God.
Je n'ai pas besoin de ça.
Was that enough?
Est-ce que ça, ce n'était pas suffisant pour lui?
Was that enough?
Est-ce que ça, c'était pas suffisant pour le diable?
No.
Non.
He said, I want to be higher.
Il voulait devenir encore plus.
I want more.
Je voudrais plus encore.
If you don't have the word of God,
si tu n'as pas la parole de
you
Dieu,
will never be happy on
tu ne
this earth.
seras jamais heureux ici sur terre.
Even in the heavens above,
même là au ciel,
you could be the highest angel.
Tu peux être l'ange le plus élevé.
And if you're not content with the word of God,
mais si tu n'es pas
Hello, my name is Vance Belter. I just go by Vance. No other names that I use. I live in Greenhow, Minnesota, about an hour away from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. I'm affiliated with 2 funeral homes. I work full-time for Wolf Funeral Home, which is an intake location for about 6 funeral homes. And we also do all the intake for the National Cremation Society and the Neptune Society for all their cremation customers as well. So I mainly do removals at this point. So I work at Wolf full-time, and then I also work for another funeral home called Metro First Call, and they also do traditional removals at nursing homes, assisted living apartments, but they also have contracts with medical examiner's office. So like one contract is the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office, so we'll do removals, which we're working with a lot of police officers and death investigators at the location where a decedent is found. Could be a crime scene or just a natural death. And our role is to just take the decedent from that place of death to the medical examiner's office. And so between those 2 locations, I'm working about 6 days a week. What else here? Family and pets. I have a wife and 5 kids, and we have 2 pets, German Shepherds. Fun fact about myself, I've been in the food industry about 30 years, and that led to an opportunity. I was invited to the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is located in Central Africa. When I was in high school, the country was called Zaire. That's a little bit more familiar with people, but it's the largest, second largest country in Africa, right in the middle in the center there, and was asked a couple years ago to go and see what I could do for ideas on helping their food supply system. Their population is about 100 million people, and they import 80% of their food currently. So some of the food companies I worked for in the past were Farm to Fork, like Del Monte Foods and Golden Plum Poultry, where we did everything from, at Del Monte, we planted the products to harvested them to process them and then shipped them out. In Golden Plum Poultry, we had our own hatcheries, grow out barns with the farmers, and then processing plants. So between those 2 companies, I have some experience with agriculture. And so over in the Democratic Republic of Congo, I had some ideas they thought were pretty promising, which the company I was working for at the time wasn't interested in doing anything in Africa. So I talked with my wife, and we decided I'd just put in my 2-week notice, and we just go off on our own to try to do these projects to help out in Africa. So we're doing farming and fishing projects in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And to help pay the bills, I just started working at a funeral home because the shift worked good for my schedule with the other things I was doing. And that led to some classes at DMAC, which led to this course. So just learning more about the funeral industry. And I think that covers everything. And I will look forward to seeing you in class, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so this story about Vance Bolter is genuinely starting to look like a conspiracy story. This is going to be the 11 a.m. today's Sunday, June 15th, 11 a.m. update. This is everything that been uncovered since yesterday. As of this recording, Bolter is of course still on the run. But you guys, when I tell you that there are so many weird things, okay, the more that we learn, the worse that this story gets. So just before I began filming a minute ago, there was a breaking news report that they had found a vehicle, I guess about 5 minutes down the road from where his home in Green Isle is. It was like a black sort of four-door, like a passenger car, not an SUV. And they said that it was a vehicle of interest, and they believed that they found the cowboy hat that he was wearing in that photo from yesterday. It was just sort of placed on the side of the roads. So let's go back and fill in some of the details. So Bolter originally attacked the Hoffmans around like 2-something in the morning in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. And during that attack, one of Hoffman's neighbors, a 71-year-old named Clarence Schaefer, said that he was up late, he was watching TV, and he heard like a bunch of gunfire. And he woke his wife up, and they ran outside to check what was happening. They said they saw Bolter's police-type vehicle backing out of the driveway, and he thought that was really strange. Like, why would a police officer be leaving the scene if you just heard somebody get pew-pewed? So they called the police. And then other neighbors corroborated his story. And I did want to mention that it has come out, and, you know, shout out to Yvette Hoffman. Apparently, she threw her body over her daughter so that her daughter would not be struck by gunfire. So, I don't know what you get that woman from Mother's Day, but anyway, amazing mom. So the manifesto that we all know about that had 70 names on it, and some of them were top Democratic lawmakers, and a lot of them were just abortion providers and also reproductive rights advocates. But some of the people on that list were, of course, Governor Tim Walz, Congresswoman Iman Omar, Senator Tina Smith, and Attorney General Keith Ellison. Now, it should be said that these people are all still at risk because this individual is still at large. But here's where it gets really weird. I mean, this story is weird all the way around, okay? But so apparently at about 10 a.m. yesterday, so this would have been Saturday the 14th, Bolter's wife, whose name is Jenny, and if you go to the website for Praetorian Security, she's listed as the president on that site. Anyway, so his wife Jenny and 3 people who were related to Bolter stopped by police at a gas station in Onamia, Minnesota. Now, here's the weird part. According to the reports, she had large sums of cash in the vehicle. What's being reported is that she had a weapon and multiple passports. But here's the crazy part. So apparently this stop went on for more than an hour, and then they let her go. Make it make sense. If you've made it this far in the video, drop the secret words Vance vanished in the comments. Because this is a developing story, don't forget to like, repost, and follow along for updates. I mean, let that sink in for a second. This is a woman whose husband wanted for attempted pew-pewing, but also actual unaliving of elected officials, stopped with weapons, cash, and passports, and a potential getaway crew, and they just let her go. I guess it's good to be white in America. So now apparently authorities believe that he's trying to flee to the Twin Cities. They've put a $50,000 reward for his arrest. But where did he go? That remains to be seen. But let's talk about some other weird stuff that's turned up. I don't know if you guys watched it, but there was a pretty extensive interview between a roommate who's named David Carlson, and apparently they grew up together. Like, they've been friends since they were little kids. And they grew up in a town called Sleepy Eye, Minnesota. Carlson said about Bolter, best friend said about him, that he was a lifelong conservative who hated abortion in the 90s, but really hadn't talked about it a lot since, but it was obviously something he was not a fan of. He definitely confirmed that he's a Trump supporter, an adamant Trump supporter is what he said, and that he voted for Trump. Sorry, MAGA, this one's on you. The roommate said Bolter had worked in Bloomington, like the manager of some food production company, but then he moved to Africa. And then his roommate said that Bolter had always sort of like fetishized law enforcement and military and stuff, and that's why his roommate said that Praetorian was sort of like a pipe dream, that something that Vance never really got off the ground. But then the federal authorities go and execute their search warrant on Bolter's home on Green Isle, and it is this big, beautiful home on like 30 acres. Where's the money coming from? And he has 4 daughters and 1 son. And they've interviewed some of Bolter's neighbors out there on Green Isle, and, you know, they were like, yeah, he was a nice guy. I lent him my blower to blow off the snow off his driveway. Like, nice guy. I knew he went to Africa to help them with some farming thing, but didn't really know much about him. Nice guy. So that's where we are.
So we came up the road about a half a mile. This SWAT team is all up here. See over there, Nate? We're about a half a mile from where we were down on the main road. Look at this. They're apparently checking houses looking for Vance. I was wondering where the SWAT team went. So something interesting, all these police officers have now lined up in the road. You see in the distance there's like the SWAT trucks and everything near where the car was found, but they are all, I don't know what they're doing over here. Really have to zoom in. First I was thinking maybe like a grid search or something. I'm not sure, but out here you got a lot of media now starting to show up. It's my buddy Ben here. Say hi, Ben. Nate. Let's see. So look, they're all leaving in like a line. See, they're all leaving. So maybe they were just coordinating.